The city never truly slept. Even before sunrise, traffic hummed through the streets. Coffee shops opened their doors and people hurried past one another without making eye contact. Among them walked Ethan Carter, one of the country's youngest self-made millionaires. At just 42, he owned a thriving technology company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Newspapers praised his business genius, but few knew the lonely man behind the expensive suits. Ethan's days were ruled by meetings, deadlines, and investments. His phone never stopped ringing. His calendar left no room for rest, let alone conversation with strangers. As he stepped out of his black sedan near the downtown financial district, his assistant hurried beside him. "Your investors are already waiting," she reminded him. "I know," Ethan replied, barely looking up from his phone. Rain from the previous night had left the sidewalks damp. People rushed around him carrying umbrellas and briefcases. Just a few blocks away, 12-year-old Marcus Johnson balanced a backpack filled with library books. Every morning before school, he delivered breakfast to his grandmother, who worked as a cleaner in a nearby office building. Life had never been easy for Marcus. After losing his father years earlier and watching his mother work 2 jobs to support the family, Marcus had learned that kindness cost nothing but could change everything. Despite their struggles, his mother always told him, "Your circumstances don't decide your character. Your choices do." Marcus remembered those words every single day. He loved science, dreamed of becoming an engineer, and spent hours fixing broken radios and discarded electronics that neighbors threw away. Teachers admired his curiosity because he never complained about what he lacked. Instead, he focused on what he could create. That morning, as Marcus crossed the street, something unusual caught his attention. Construction workers had finished repairing part of the sidewalk late the previous evening. Temporary steel plates covered an underground maintenance tunnel. Marcus slowed his pace. One of the plates looked wrong. It wasn't sitting flat. A tiny gap had formed beneath one corner, almost impossible for most people to notice. Curious, Marcus carefully knelt beside it. He had helped his uncle at construction sites during school holidays and understood how dangerous unstable covers could be. He gently pressed the edge with his foot. The plate shifted. His heart raced. "If someone heavy steps there," he whispered, "the entire sheet could collapse." Marcus immediately looked around for workers. None, no. Warning signs remained. No barriers. Morning. Commuters continued walking directly toward the hidden danger. At that exact moment, a luxury sedan stopped beside the curb. Ethan Carter stepped out. Without looking where he was walking, he continued reading an important email while heading straight toward the unstable steel plate. Marcus's eyes widened. "Sir," he shouted. Ethan didn't hear him. The traffic drowned out his voice. Marcus dropped his backpack and ran. Several people turned to watch. The millionaire frowned as someone suddenly appeared in front of him. "Excuse me?" Ethan said impatiently. Marcus lifted one hand. "Don't move." Ethan stared at the boy. "I have an important meeting." "Please," Marcus said, breathing hard. "Don't move. Just follow me." The businessman frowned. "What are you talking about?" Marcus glanced toward the metal plate. There wasn't time to explain. "Trust me." Around them, strangers slowed down. Some assumed the boy wanted money. Others thought he was causing trouble. Ethan sighed. "I'm sorry, son, but I'm busy." He attempted to step around Marcus. Marcus quickly blocked him again. "Please." Security guards nearby noticed the interaction and started walking over. One guard spoke firmly. "Sir, is everything all right?" "I'm fine," Ethan answered. "He just won't let me pass." Marcus pointed toward the ground. "No one should step there." The guard looked. "It looks perfectly fine." Marcus shook his head. "It isn't." The guard chuckled. "Kid, move aside." Marcus refused. Every second mattered. Ethan checked his watch. "I don't have time for this." Ignoring Marcus's warning, he shifted his weight forward. Marcus reacted instantly, with surprising strength. He grabbed Ethan's sleeve and pulled him backward. At that exact second, crack, the massive steel plate folded inward like thin cardboard. Concrete shattered. The sidewalk exploded beneath where Ethan had been about to step. A section nearly 8 feet wide collapsed into a deep underground maintenance shaft. Gasps filled the street. People screamed. Dust shot into the air. Several bicycles toppled over. The security guards froze. Ethan stood completely motionless. His face turned pale as he stared into the dark hole only inches ahead of him. If Marcus hadn't stopped him, he would have disappeared into the opening. For the first time in years, the millionaire couldn't find words. His expensive phone slipped from his trembling hand onto the pavement. Marcus quietly picked it up and handed it back. "You okay, sir?" Ethan looked at the boy with disbelief. You saved my life, Marcus." Gave a small smile. "I just noticed something." Everyone else missed. Sirens echoed in the distance as emergency crews rushed toward the scene. Construction supervisors arrived moments later. Horrified by what had happened, one engineer examined the collapsed section before looking at Marcus. "How did you know?" Marcus pointed toward the shifted corner. "It moved when I tested it." The engineer slowly nodded. "That's exactly where the support failed." Reporters soon appeared. Cameras flashing from every direction. Microphones surrounded Ethan. "Mr. Carter, how close were you? What happened? Who is the young hero?" Ethan ignored every question. Instead, he turned toward Marcus. "What's your name?" "Marcus, how old are you?" 12. "And what can I do to thank you?" Marcus shrugged. "You don't owe me anything." Those simple words hit Ethan harder than the collapsing sidewalk ever could. Most people who approached him wanted something. Money, connections, opportunities. This boy wanted nothing. Just then, Marcus noticed the time. His eyes widened. "Oh no, what is it?" Ethan asked. "I'm late. For school?" Marcus nodded. "And I still have to take breakfast to my grandma before class." Without another word, he picked up his worn backpack. The zipper was broken. Several books nearly fell out. Ethan noticed they were engineering books borrowed from the public library. "You like engineering?" Marcus smiled. "I love solving problems." Before Ethan could ask another question, Marcus hurried away into the crowd. The millionaire watched until the boy disappeared. For the first time in years, he skipped the meeting. Instead, he stood silently beside the collapsed sidewalk, unable to stop thinking about the child who had saved his life. What Ethan didn't know was that Marcus's act of courage had uncovered something far greater than a construction accident. Hidden beneath that collapsed tunnel was a decades-old secret, one connected to Ethan's company, his late father, and a forgotten promise that would soon change both of their lives forever. The morning after the collapse, every major news channel carried the same headline: 12-year-old boy saves millionaire from deadly sidewalk collapse. Marcus barely noticed. He wasn't interested in interviews or attention. His biggest concern was finishing his math homework before helping his grandmother after school. Meanwhile, Ethan Carter couldn't stop thinking about the boy. For years, his life had been measured by profits, stock prices, and business deals. Yet one fearless child had risked everything for a stranger without expecting anything in return. That single act of kindness unsettled him more than any business crisis ever had. The construction company immediately launched an investigation. When engineers entered the damaged underground tunnel, they expected to find only broken concrete and rusted support beams. Instead, they discovered something no one had seen for nearly 30 years. Behind a collapsed brick wall was a sealed maintenance room. Inside were dozens of old filing cabinets covered in dust. Most of the papers had been ruined by moisture. But one heavy metal box remained untouched. It was locked. The city contacted Ethan because the faded company logo on the box belonged to Carter Industrial, the manufacturing business his late father had owned decades before Ethan built his technology empire. Ethan stared silently at the photographs sent to his phone. His father's logo, hidden underground. For 30 years. "Open it," he quietly instructed. Inside the box were engineering blueprints, photographs, handwritten journals, and a sealed envelope. Across the front, written in neat blue ink, were 6 simple words. "For my son, Ethan Carter." His hands trembled. His father had died when Ethan was only 17. There had never been a letter. At least, none that anyone knew existed. That evening, Ethan sat alone in his office. Outside, the city lights sparkled against the glass windows. Slowly, he opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. "If you're reading this, then fate has uncovered what I could not protect. Ethan swallowed hard. The letter explained that, decades earlier, his father had secretly designed a low-cost water purification system capable of providing clean drinking water to poor communities. Instead of selling the invention for enormous profit, he wanted to donate the technology. Several powerful investors strongly opposed the idea. They believed enormous money could be made by keeping the technology exclusive. According to the letter, someone inside the company had hidden the research shortly before Ethan's father unexpectedly died. The project disappeared. The dream died with it. Until now. Ethan leaned back in complete silence. His father hadn't wanted to become richer. He had wanted to help people, somewhere along the way. Ethan had become everything his father never wished to be. The next morning, Ethan visited Marcus's neighborhood. Luxury cars had never entered those narrow streets before. Children stopped playing basketball to stare. Neighbors peeked through windows. Marcus was repairing an old fan on the front porch. When he looked up, he froze. "Mr. Carter?" Ethan smiled. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Marcus stood respectfully. "No, sir. I came to thank you properly." Marcus shrugged again. "You already thanked me." "No." Ethan looked around. "You saved much more than my life." Marcus invited him inside. The apartment was small but spotless. His mother apologized for not having expensive coffee. Ethan smiled warmly. "This is perfect." For the first time in years, he meant it. While talking, Ethan noticed dozens of homemade inventions. A solar-powered phone charger, a tiny wind turbine, a water filter built from recycled bottles. "You made these?" Ethan asked. Marcus nodded. "I like building things that help people." Ethan couldn't believe it. The 12-year-old reminded him of the stories he'd heard about his own father. Curious, creative, always thinking about others first. Days later, Ethan invited Marcus and his family to visit Carter Technologies. Employees lined the hallways applauding the young hero. Marcus blushed with embarrassment. "I didn't expect this." "You earned it," Ethan replied. During the tour, Marcus asked questions that surprised every engineer. Instead of asking about expensive gadgets, he focused on solving real-world problems. "What are you doing for neighborhoods that can't afford your products?" Silence filled the room. No executive had ever asked that question. Neither had Ethan. That evening, Ethan reopened his father's letter. He read one sentence over and over. "True success is measured by the number of lives you improve." For the first time in decades, he canceled several luxury projects worth millions. His board of directors was furious. "You'll lose investors. We'll lose profits. This is financial suicide." Ethan calmly replied, "Then we've been chasing the wrong success." Together with Marcus, he secretly restarted his father's forgotten clean water project. Engineers worked day and night. Marcus visited every weekend after finishing school. His creative ideas amazed professionals with decades of experience. Within months, they built an affordable purification system capable of bringing clean water to thousands of families. News spread quickly. Communities celebrated. Children finally drank safe water. Ethan felt richer than he ever had, not because his company made money, but because people smiled. One afternoon, an elderly man arrived at Carter Technologies asking to speak privately with Ethan. His name was Samuel Brooks. Retired, 81 years old. He had worked beside Ethan's father. Samuel placed an old photograph on the desk. In it stood Ethan's father, holding the hand of a little boy. Marcus stared at the picture. His breathing stopped. The little boy looked exactly like his grandfather. Samuel's voice shook. "I've carried this secret for 30 years. Ethan looked confused. "What secret?" Samuel slowly removed another envelope from his coat. "This project." He paused, fighting back tears. "Was never meant to belong only to your family." He looked directly at Marcus. "It began because your grandfather saved Ethan's father's life." The room fell completely silent. Marcus and Ethan looked at each other in stunned disbelief. Samuel unfolded one final document. The signatures at the bottom revealed a promise that had been buried for 3 decades. A promise that legally entitled Marcus's family to share ownership of the life-changing invention, and exposed the betrayal of the very people who had built Ethan's fortune. The room was silent. Ethan Carter stared at the faded document while Marcus held the old photograph with trembling hands. The resemblance between the little boy in the picture and Marcus's late grandfather was unmistakable. Samuel Brooks took a slow breath. 32 years ago, he began. Your grandfather, David Johnson, wasn't an executive or an engineer. He was a maintenance worker. One rainy evening, a chemical pipe burst inside Carter Industrial. Everyone ran except David. He rushed back into the building to save your father. Ethan's eyes widened. My father never told me that. He wanted David to be remembered for his kindness. Not treated like a hero, Samuel replied. The 2 men became close friends after that day. Samuel pointed to the document. They promised each other that if they ever created something that could improve people's lives, it would belong to everyone, not just the wealthy. Your father wrote that promise into a legal partnership. Marcus looked down. So, my grandfather helped create the project? Samuel nodded. He didn't design the technology. He inspired it. He reminded your father that millions of families struggled every day for clean drinking water. That conversation became the beginning of the entire project. Ethan felt tears forming. His father had never built the invention for fame or fortune. He had built it because one humble man had opened his eyes to the struggles of ordinary families. But after your father died, Samuel continued, a group of executives hid the documents. They erased David Johnson's name and buried the entire project. Without the partnership papers, no one knew the truth. Ethan slowly closed his eyes. For years, he had believed success meant becoming richer than everyone else. Now, he realized the greatest part of his father's legacy had never been money, it was compassion. The next morning, Ethan called an emergency board meeting. Every executive filled the conference room. The atmosphere was tense. One director spoke first. We've reviewed the legal documents, and they're authentic. Another executive leaned forward. If this becomes public, people will question decisions made decades ago. Ethan stood. They should. The room fell silent. My father made a promise. It was broken long before I became CEO. He looked around the table. Today we're going to keep it. One investor interrupted. Do you understand how much money you're giving away? Ethan smiled calmly. I finally understand how little money matters if it costs your integrity. For the first time in company history, Ethan announced that the water purification technology would be produced at cost for developing communities. A significant share of the project's profits would fund scholarships, science education, and clean water programs in underserved neighborhoods. He also announced that the Johnson family would receive the recognition and partnership they had been denied for decades. News spread around the world. People were shocked. Many praised the decision. Others called it the most generous act ever made by a billionaire. Marcus couldn't believe it. You don't have to do all this, he quietly told Ethan. Ethan smiled. No. He placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. I should have done it much sooner. Weeks later, Ethan visited Marcus's school. The auditorium was packed with students. Instead of giving a speech about wealth or business, Ethan told them the story of a brave 12-year-old who refused to walk away when he saw danger. I almost lost my life because I was too busy looking at my phone, Ethan admitted. The person who saved me wasn't the richest person in the city. He looked toward Marcus in the front row. He was simply the person paying attention. The audience applauded, felt embarrassed but smiled. His principal invited him to the stage. What were you thinking that morning? She asked. Marcus answered honestly. I wasn't thinking about who he was. I just knew someone needed help. The room became completely silent. Those simple words touched every heart in the audience. Months passed and the clean water systems reached schools, villages, and hospitals across the country. Children who had once walked miles for safe water could now drink clean water near their homes. Families wrote letters thanking the foundation. Teachers shared stories of healthier students. Doctors reported fewer waterborne illnesses. Every success reminded Ethan of his father's forgotten dream and of the boy who had brought it back to life. Marcus continued studying just as hard as before. Despite the attention, he remained humble. He still visited the public library every week. He still repaired broken electronics for neighbors. He still carried groceries for his grandmother without being asked. One afternoon, Ethan found Marcus sitting on a park bench reading an engineering book. "You've changed my company," Ethan said. Marcus laughed. "I didn't do that. You changed me," Ethan handed him a small envelope. Inside was a full scholarship that would cover Marcus's education from middle school through university, along with a place in Carter Technology's future innovation program. Marcus looked up in disbelief. "I don't know what to say. You already said everything that mattered the day you told me. Don't move, follow me." Both smiled. Years later, Marcus graduated as one of the country's youngest environmental engineers. Instead of accepting offers from larger corporations, he joined the Carter Foundation. Together, he and Ethan expanded affordable clean water systems to communities around the world, and the entrance of the foundation's headquarters stood a bronze statue. It wasn't of a billionaire, it wasn't of a famous inventor. It showed a young boy reaching out his hand to stop a stranger from taking one more step. Beneath it were simple words: "One act of courage can change countless lives." Every visitor asked about the statue. Every guide told the same story. Not a story about money, not a story about success, a story about kindness, a story about paying attention, a story about keeping promises. On the anniversary of the sidewalk collapse, Ethan and Marcus stood together at the very place where their lives had first crossed paths. The damaged sidewalk had long since been repaired. People walked safely across it every day. Unaware of what had once happened there, Ethan looked at Marcus and smiled. "I used to think the most valuable thing I owned was my company. And now?" Marcus asked. "Now I know the greatest wealth is the chance to make someone else's life better." Marcus nodded. His mother's words echoed in his mind. "Your circumstances don't decide your character. Your choices do." That lesson had guided him on the day he saved a stranger. It had transformed a millionaire into a man of compassion, and it had proved that true greatness is never measured by the size of a bank account, but by the kindness we choose to show when someone else needs us most. The end.